worked for a hot brand, one of the hottest. Just the mention of its name could open most doors. Partner that with an amazing role that was a reflection of my passion and my experience. I have found my dream job, a design-centric brand located in a beautiful corner of the world, innovative, fast-paced, driven with incredibly talented people. So after 12 years, I asked myself, is this still your dream? The answer was no. So what do you do when you're done with the dream job at the dream brand with the dream resources? In my case, you leave your dream.
Just do it.
This isn't easy for someone like me who's challenged with change, who gets attached deeply, and who's loved most places she's landed. Counter that with a personality that's curious, engaged, loves to learn, and experience new things. You see, I'm addicted to creating something that's new or fixing something that's broke. Easily bored, but desperately not wanting to let go. I've always had to push myself out the door. I'd love to stand in front of you today and say that I embrace change, that I leave people, places, jobs easily, but I'm a work in progress. And as I stand before you today, I challenge you to think, it's not always as easy as love it or leave it. The real challenge is to love it and leave it. The son of Greek immigrants, my dad had what many considered to be a dream job. Steady work, good pay, a boss who respected and admired him and wanted him to play a role in his business. And although that had been my dad's dream job for a long time, his dream changed. His dream was to start his own business with 2 children under the age of 4. That business thrives today. My dad left his mark. My dad had to leave his dream job to do it. Should one dream job last us our entire career? Should one dream last us an entire lifetime? I challenge us to encourage leaving dreams in ourselves and in others. So what do you do if you're ready to leave the dream job, right? Well, I'm going to suggest you write yourself a pink slip on paper first and ask yourself some questions. Am I getting too comfortable? Am I only doing what I'm an expert at? Has my title become me? Have you had the company logo tattooed on your ankle? Are you starting to speak in company code? If you were to write yourself a pink slip, what would it say? So before we're ready to give up the dream job, let's give props, right? Dream jobs are a good thing. They're a great thing. They're the best. They fulfill us and they change us. And I would argue that they change us more than they fulfill us. This is where it gets tough. This is when you have to love it and leave it. Leaving your dreams may never make sense to others. Leaving your dream job may never make sense to others. You're ready to go. You're ready to explore and change. The questions start to come from your colleagues, from your family, from friends, even from yourself. Mine sounded a little like this. Are you crazy? That would be my dream job. I would kill for a job like that. Aren't you going to miss it? Dream jobs, in the eyes of others, often mask what's really going on inside of us. So when you're ready to leave that dream job, I know you're going to think it through, but please, please don't forget to feel it through. It will be frightening. It will feel chaotic. It will feel confusing. It will be bumpy. But this kind of bumpy is good. When you have the courage to leave your dream job, you're acting, not reacting. Thank you.
You can do anything you want, if you want it bad enough. There are people who get paid to build robots for Star Wars movies, who jump out of airplanes, and there's there's even somebody who gets paid to pick eucalyptus or sick koala bears in Australia. That's a job. You can do anything you want if you want it bad enough. This was something that my mom said to my brother and I over and over again throughout our whole childhood. So with that thought in the back of my head, in 2015, I made a major life change. At the time, I was living in Boston. This was my street in Charlestown. I had the most amazing group of friends, and I was working at a well-respected agency in the Seaport, and we had an impressive client roster, but I wasn't completely happy. And when I started my job 6 years prior, I loved it. I loved working in the advertising industry. It was great, but at this time, I was working 70 hours a week, and I just felt like I was faking it for 75% of my life, and I just couldn't do that with this one awesome chance that we have. So I quit my corporate job, my cushy job, and moved all the way around the world to New Zealand to become a nanny. You can do anything you want if you want it bad enough. I'm going to say that again because the if you want it bad enough part, that's really where the courage comes in. Like you said, people are going to doubt you. They're, what? What are you doing? Like, you're almost 30 and you have a good job. Have you ever been there? No, I've never been there. I know how old I am. And no one's coming with me, but I can't not go just because nobody will come. So trust your gut, always. People are always going to doubt you. Moving to New Zealand was the best thing I ever did, ever. I lived with an awesome Kiwi family. If you've never been, you have to go. It's this beautiful, otherworldly, raw place. I got to do all of the things that really fed my soul, like read the books that I wanted to read, travel, practice yoga, and I even met my future husband right here. But all of that good stuff that came out of it, it wasn't always easy. So I feel like any kind of change, may it be a life-changing one or a small one, are three phases, right? Scary, hard, and great. Scary is the first part. It's like, okay, I'm doing this. I'm deciding that I'm doing this, and I'm going to say it out loud. And then I'm going to tell other people. And other people might react a certain way, but that's okay. And then it's hard. So moving all those things around to actually change what you're trying to do, but that's a to-do list, so you can check it off, and it's manageable. And then it's actually doing it, and that's really uncomfortable. And that's when it gets hard, is the uncomfortable part. You're like, I don't like this, it's not easy anymore. But after the uncomfortableness wears, that's the really, really great part. The part that people do those big risks for, and they say, oh my God, I'm so glad I did that. Like I said, I think this can be applied to like any big change or small change along the way. So this was an experience I had. I went on a trip to the South Island, Queenstown. It's a beautiful place. This is the Remarkables in the back, and this is the town. And I had asked somebody at my hostel what I should do that day. And they're like, oh, hike Ben Lomond, it's great. It's like, okay, sure, I'll do that. And they're like, you've been hiking since you've been in New Zealand, right? I'm like, yeah, definitely, it'll be fun. So this is the town, and then up here is the summit of the mountain. Had I seen this photo before I went on this hike, I never would have done it, ever. I'm like, no way, that's not for me. Even like halfway up, I was hiking, and it's pretty steep. It was like a 9-hour hike and return. That up there, I was like, there's no way that's where this is leading to. And you keep walking, and you walk, and then it says there's an hour to the summit, and it points right up there, and I'm like, oh my God, that's the top. And there are these tiny ant-sized people walking down the mountain. And I was like, okay, well, I went this far. I can't turn around now. I have to keep going. And there was literally a point where I was pulling myself up over rocks and like thinking, I cannot do this. Why am I doing this? I'm not a hiker. I'm not a mountain climber. I'm going to die, and that's going to be it. But I passed this Kiwi couple on the way down, and they must have seen my face because they were like, how you doing? I was like, this is really hard. Really, really hard, and it's scary. They said, you know, it is, but once you get to the top, it's absolutely worth it. And they were 100% right. Thank you.
My name is John Dilling. I'm the creative director for Koi VFX, who's in the house, and also its parent company, Saltwater Collective, down the street. And yeah, I'm going to talk about escaping the comfort zone, the courage to step out. It's really just not being smart enough to know your limitations. So this is really offensive to New Englanders, you know. But you know, in physics, cold is an illusion. You know, it's just the absence of heat. And so you know, conversely, courage is really just the absence of fear. Point of fact is, I'm afraid of spiders. So one of the first things that I had to do in my life is identify what I'm afraid of, and you know, it's not really easy to tell someone I'm sorry for screwing up your timeline. You know, and even the fear of failure is something that haunts me in the back of my mind. But one of the things I always remember is that all of these things can be repaired. You can repair relationships with, you know, family and coworkers, and you know, you can always find a new client or a new job if you do something bad enough to get fired from. But you know, always realizing that, you know, the fear of failure is something that's very real. And one of the things that I always subscribe to is this idea that, you know, failure is steps to success. So I know I'm going to mess up, and if I can put in the back of my mind that there's going to be a lesson that I learn and not do again, you know, I'll take that chance. So the other thing is I love to do like tutorials or train myself, or I'll try to make a process a little bit more efficient, because my thought process is that if that project comes up again, I'll know exactly what to do. So one of the things that, one of the quotes that I really love is, you know, luck is preparedness meeting opportunity. And so I try to prepare myself a lot. You know, if anyone ever looks at me or talks to me, I'm doing a tutorial, I'm doing training in R&D, which accounting hates. That's not a line item. And so, you know, after doing a lot of training, I like to try to get the chance to do the thing that I just learned, which isn't really that smart, but you know, whatever. The accepting the challenge part is the thing that actually, believe it or not, is easy. You know, when you tell someone you'll do it for free or you'll do it discounted, they'll normally say yes. So if you have an idea that you want to implement, just try to find someone who want that idea. You know, this is one of my another one of my favorite quotes. If you know, when opportunity knocks, open the door, and if it doesn't, drag in, kicking and screaming. So unfortunately, I take a lot of people when I when I say, yeah, we'll do that. So sorry. I apologize. So a couple of projects that this was applied to is, if anyone's seen the C&J commercial that we did with Anchorline, who's an awesome production company in Portsmouth. The idea was to put a man's head on a bird's body, and of course we could do that. So this is pretty much the breakdown of that project. That project had about 2 or 3 30-hour sitting at my desk work cycles. And that does happen too. And another example is we did a project where we had an autonomous jacket. So the idea was that we would do a motion capture and do, okay, I learned how to do apparel design, but I've never done it for a project. And yeah, of course we could do this complicated jacket. And so these are essentially the stitched pieces that got put together, and it was simulated from the motion capture. And these were the final results. I don't have the video for me because we don't have it yet. But yeah, and so honestly, the biggest thing is just getting out there and learning how to do something and just offering it up. And that's it.
Greetings. My name is Skylar, and after my introduction, you could be thinking one of two things. One, where's the nearest exit? This is not what I signed up for. Or two, genuine excitement to hear my story. All I ask is that you go into the talk with an open mind, and with that being said, let's begin. My interest in veganism was, seemingly, very abrupt. I decided at the age of 12 that I could not continue eating animal products with a clear conscience. For those that don't know, a person that is vegan does not eat or use animal products. Vegan is different than vegetarian because vegetarians eat all animal products except for meat and commonly do purchase things made from animals like fur and leather products. Whereas vegans do not eat anything derived from an animal and do not purchase anything coming from an animal. This may have come as a shock to my mom, though if it did, she didn't show it. I had always shown genuine admiration for all living things, so my hope going in was that she would completely understand my decision, as she, too, had a love for animals and had spent time volunteering at humane societies and assisting stray animals in any way she could. Turns out she didn't quite understand my decision after all. She seemed to understand I'm not eating meat, as the animals were slaughtered for consumption of their meat, but did not see the reasons behind not eating other animal products that I did. Problem was she did, and still does, refuse to watch any information or content that explains the reasons I made the decision to go vegan instead of vegetarian in the first place, the quality of life for dairy cows, etc. Those same resources I used to educate myself leading up to my decision. 24 million chickens are slaughtered daily in the United States alone for consumption. Part of the process in the dairy industry is to take mother cows' calves away from when they're just 1 day old, feeding them a milk replacement including cattle blood. Included in the videos I watched when educating myself further on the topic was videos of the mothers and their babies crying out for one another in agony to no avail. Discovering these things shocked me, as I knew animals were killed for food, but had not the slightest idea on what scale. I felt guilty that I was unaware of these things at the time, despite it being not my fault. We as carnivorous children are not often taught about where exactly our food comes from, or the correct information along with it, because our guardians deem it too graphic or assume we know when we don't. Had I been given a choice when I was a young child, I would not have continued eating animal products. The statistics I became aware of and the information I absorbed is the information that was never brought to my attention, and when it was, the idea of veganism seemed the best option for me. Fortunately, I was able to form my opinions on the topic not too much later in life, while most children continue doing what they were raised to do out of habit. This is included because the research I did is part of my journey to veganism. Additionally, statistics were what broke the ice between my mom and I when she was trying to understand my choice. Enough with statistics for me, though, as the topic of this talk is not centered around that. Feel free to do research in your own time if you want to learn more. Back to my story. I was pressured by the people I called my friends at the time to eat ice cream made from cow's milk because that's what they were having, and at the time, I found it difficult to say no. They made me feel ungrateful, and because I had to carpool home with them, on top of the fact that my friends' parents were also pressuring me, I gave in. Their pressure and judgment on top of my guilt leading up to and after this happened did not motivate me to keep going, did not make me want to be courageous. Another time I was at lunch with 4 friends, and one of the boys I just met tricked me into eating yogurt. This was the last memory I can recall that pushed me downward in my journey, possibly the lowest I ever went. This occurrence, along with the others, taught me that I cared too much about what certain people thought of me, and that I needed to get my priorities in straight. I did, and it was one of the best decisions of my life thus far. I went vegan for the final time on July 2nd, 2017. Before then, throughout all of my efforts, I viewed veganism as a diet rather than a lifestyle. By that I mean not purchasing genuine leather and fur materials, etc., anything derived from an animal. I did not feel right. I did not feel complete. When I finally took the step towards turning veganism into a lifestyle, I instantly knew that it was what I was missing. I finally felt whole. Throughout my journey leading up to July 2nd, I made mistakes. As with any other diet, I slipped up. As a 12-year-old transitioning to a healthy vegan diet in a home with 4 carnivores, 2 of which are my parents, I had to resist the temptation to eat the product I had eaten all my life, and those of you who have gone on seemingly drastic diets know the feeling. Luckily, after a month or so, I craved predominantly earth foods rather than unhealthy foods I was used to. Now, those cravings are a thing of the past, and I feel so much better. Luckily, through the love and support I was able to find within myself, I was able to motivate myself to become a courageous person, something I was lacking before and I'm glad to have achieved. I have come a long way in the past 2 years. I am now a healthy, happy teen with friends that respect my choices and close family that has evolved to acknowledge my passion for this topic and support me when I need support. This being with the exception of a few select people. Can anyone relate here? Those few members of the family that are just set in stone with their beliefs. The I'm smart, you're dumb, I'm big, you're little, I'm right, you're wrong, there's nothing you can do about it family members. My hope at the end of this talk is not to convert listeners to veganism, though if you have any questions regarding that, do feel free to approach me after the talk. My hope is that those listening will address veganism with an open mind and be willing to listen and acknowledge others' choices in a respectful manner, as I will always do with people of opposing choices. What I wish you could all take from this talk is this: be kind. Being kind to yourself clears a pathway to being courageous, in that you can focus on what makes you happy. Being kind to others is a step in the right direction to being kind to yourself. Be kind to yourself, to others, to the environment in any way you deem possible, because our planet, lovely planet Earth, needs our help.
So I'm going to tell the story of how watching a Chinese film called Riding Alone for Thousands of Miles gave me the courage to have a child. So when I was growing up, I loved kids. I worked at a summer camp in high school and loved being around kids, loved playing with them, loved how open they are and how fresh their perspective on life is. And I was really excited about someday becoming a parent. But as I got into my 20s and that started to fade, I think I started to have friends who were parents, and I saw how hard parenting really is. And I also started to understand the demons that I had from my childhood and how much power they actually have. And I was scared about what it would be like to parent. And so by the time I met my wife in my early 30s, I was pretty ambivalent about whether I wanted to have a child or not. And when we got married, we were both officially ambivalent. But a year later, her grandfather died. And she spent his last week with her grandfather, her parents, her sister, and her sister's kids, 4 generations all together, celebrating his life and helping him transition out of it. And that experience made her realize that she wanted to have another generation in her family, that she wanted to have a child. But I was still really not sure. And I think you have to be sure you want to have a child. So fast forward to a few years, and now I'm 41. Things haven't changed despite lots of soul searching, except that now I've also quit my corporate job and gone to photography school, and I'm worried that I can't start a photography business and be a parent and do either one well, on top of the other things. And so one night, we were watching this movie called Riding Alone for Thousands of Miles. It's about a Japanese fisherman who's learns that his estranged son is dying. And his son was a filmmaker. And so in order to try to repair the relationship, he travels to rural China to film a Chinese folk opera called Riding Alone for Thousands of Miles that his son wanted to film and wasn't able to. And so he goes off, he doesn't know anyone, he doesn't speak the language, he doesn't know anything about folk opera or filmmaking. And he's completely out of his depth. And of course there are obstacles he hasn't anticipated. And so he kind of makes a mess of things. And he could have given up, and he doesn't. He's so committed to this that he persists, and he finds people who will help him. And things don't turn out the way he expected or wanted, but they're okay, and he's transformed. And watching this movie, I realize that this is how I see parenting. Parenting is like going off to a land where you don't know anyone and don't speak the language, and you're not prepared, and the obstacles are bigger than you thought. And I realized that I still want a child, but I'm afraid that this will ruin my life, that it will be too much, and that I will lose everything that I love. I have a better life than I thought possible already, and I'm worried that this will make it come crashing down. And watching this movie, I realized that there is another possible ending for my story, that there's another way it could go. And I paused the movie, and I turned to my wife, and I said, I will trust in the universe to walk out into the unknown with you, and I will have a child. And so here he is. exist. And so it's been amazing. It's been hard. Some days I'm still not sure I made the right, how my story's going to end. But I think I made the right choice. And thank you.
Can you remember the scariest moment in your life? In your work life? That most terrifying moment when you knew everything was going to hinge on this moment and you didn't know how it was going to turn out and your stomach is, can you just get to that moment? You've all had it. Get there with me now. Get to that moment. Remember what you felt like? Okay, good. Because that moment is happening for me right now. Last night, after 10 years at my very good job with very good benefits, I gave my notice and I jumped off a cliff. When I was 15 years old, I was going through my baby scrapbooks and I found my kindergarten report card. Top marks across the board. Total teacher's pet. Except for one column at the end where I actually scored at the bottom. And as I turned it sideways to figure out what did I do wrong in kindergarten, I thought, alphabet, nap time? No, creativity. I failed creativity in kindergarten. So now fast forward 10 years, I'm 15 years old. I'm planning on being a writer and a photographer and a Broadway star, or maybe all three. And this dusty piece of paper hits me in the gut like a dodgeball. What is wrong with me? Something is wrong with me. She knew it. Never mind, there was a diabolical kindergarten teacher somewhere failing kids at creativity at 5 years old. I have a problem, and I can't have this life. I can't do these things. I've got to play it a little safer. This stupid report card haunts me like an ex-boyfriend on Facebook years before Facebook. I play it safe. I build a career, a successful career in publishing. I am not a writer, I'm an editor. I work with writers. I'm not a photographer. I hire graphic designers and I work with photographers, giving them way too much feedback. You know the type. But that voice never stops nagging me. That voice, could I do something creative and entrepreneurial? Could I create something from nothing? I work with great people. I learn so much. But the voice doesn't go away. I always feel like the oddest duck in my office. Just like I don't quite fit in. I'm definitely the oddest duck in my MBA program. I watch my creative friends going through life. They're struggling and thriving. They're reaching, seeing what they're capable of. No matter what they create, it's gorgeous. It doesn't matter the medium. They're just reaching down to see what their imaginations can create from nothing. It's like an Olympian who's trying to figure out what her body is capable of. And it feels like everything. Meanwhile, I'm having this crisis, that the voice that won't go away, and it's starting to feel like a tractor trailer on a rainy night coming at me, and something has to shift. So I buy my first good camera, and I put it on the shelf and stare at it. And then I take it off the shelf. And then I take a writing class, and I take another. And then I take my now family of 4 across country on a road trip for blissful weeks away from my life. And when I have time to do anything, I take pictures, and I write stories. Last November, my now 8-year-old daughter, who has spent half her life listening to me yammer on about wanting to jump off this cliff, makes it her birthday candle wish that I just do it. Jesus. Last month, I got the same email that you got asking for stories about courage, and so here I am. because at some point, the fear of jumping off the cliff became worse than the fear of not jumping off the cliff. Somewhere along the way, the adrenaline of the leap became better than the morphine of safety. I am going to jump onto an entrepreneurial road of creativity and success and failure and colors and stories. My name is Amy Sterndale, and I am creating a communications and storytelling company. Is it going to be scary? You bet. But that's just another story waiting to happen. Thank you.